Jack stood at the control panel of the Astra, looking out at the vast, empty stretch of space ahead. The ship was a quiet hum of machinery, the crew going about their duties. It was just another routine mission, nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. Or so Jack thought. "Hey Jack, we've got something, Ava," his fellow crew member said, her voice sharp with urgency. She was sitting at the communication station, staring at the screen with a frown. Jack turned to face her. "Going on? A distress signal? It's coming from a Zarga ship." The Zarga were an alien species known for their ruthless warriors and their strange, secretive ways. They didn't exactly have the best reputation in the galaxy. Jack wasn't keen on getting involved with them. "Do you think it's a trap?" Jack asked, crossing his arms. Ava didn't hesitate. "Could be. But we can't just ignore it. This is our job. We have to respond." Jack sighed. He didn't like the idea of risking the crew for something that might be a trap. But he knew Ava wouldn't let it go, and the ship had orders to help anyone in need. He didn't have a choice. "Fine. Put it through." A moment later, the image of an alien woman appeared on the screen. She was tall, with glowing blue eyes and sharp, elegant features. Her skin shimmered like polished stone, and she wore a regal-looking outfit, the kind of clothing Jack would expect from royalty. "Please," the woman's voice crackled through the speaker. "I need your help." Jack felt a chill run through him. Something about her eyes seemed desperate, but also powerful. This wasn't just a random distress call. This woman was important. "What's going on?" Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman looked down for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "My name is Lyra. I am the bride of Vorin, the warlord of the Zarga. He has betrayed me. I need to escape." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Escape from your husband?" "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice steady, despite the weight of her words. "My marriage was arranged when I was very young, and I was promised to Vorin, but I did not know what kind of man he truly was. Become a tyrant using our people to gain power? I want nothing to do with him anymore. Please, I need to get to Earth. They will protect me." The crew listened in silence, exchanging glances. Jack didn't know much about the Zarga, but he had heard enough stories to know that they were dangerous. They weren't a species to be crossed, and their politics were brutal. "I'm not sure we can help you," Jack said slowly. "People have a reputation for being ... difficult, and we're not exactly equipped to take on a warlord." Lyra's eyes flashed with a mix of frustration and desperation. "I don't ask for much. Just transport me to Earth. I will leave your crew in peace once I am safe." Jack hesitated. Earth was far, and the risk of crossing Vorin's wrath was high. But there was something in her eyes, something that made him pause. "I'm sorry," Jack said, finally shaking his head. "But I can't risk the crew for this. We have a mission, and I won't put anyone in danger." Ava shot Jack a sharp. "Look, Jack, we have to help her. Can't just turn our backs on someone in need." Jack turned to face her. "I understand your feelings, but this is bigger than us. We don't know what we're dealing with." Lyra remained silent, her eyes locked on Jack's. There was a moment of tension, a standoff. She seemed to consider his words, then nodded. Slowly, "I understand your hesitation," she said, her voice softening, "but I must insist. If you do not help me, I will find another way. But I hope it does not come to that." Jack could feel the weight of her words, but he still couldn't bring himself to agree. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders and think logically. The risks were too great. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she leaned closer to the screen. "You don't understand," she said, her voice steady but with an edge of coldness. "I am not asking for your charity. I am offering you a chance to make a choice. Help me, and you will never regret it. Refuse me, and you will live with the consequences." Jack frowned, but before he could respond, Lyra turned and walked out of view, disappearing into the shadows of her ship. "That's it, huh?" Ava said. "She's not taking no for an answer." Jack didn't say anything. He stared at the empty screen, his mind racing. He had made his decision. He wouldn't risk the crew for a stranger, no matter how desperate she seemed. But what if he was wrong? The Astra drifted in space, silent, as the crew waited for the next move. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Something about Lyra's final words echoed in his mind. As they set course for their next destination, Jack couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake. The Astra was quiet. The crew still in their usual routines, but Jack could feel the tension in the air. Everyone knew something had changed after the encounter with Lyra. The refusal to help her felt like the right decision at the time. But as the hours passed, Jack began to doubt himself. "Do you really think she was serious?" Ava asked, standing beside Jack at the control panel. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. Jack glanced at her. "She seemed like she was, didn't she?" "Yeah," Ava replied, "and it's not just her." Words, there was something in her eyes, like she wasn't going to let this go. Jack couldn't deny it. Lyra's eyes had stayed with him long after their conversation ended. There was a fire there, something he didn't expect from a woman who claimed to be trapped in a forced marriage. But Jack had made his decision, and he wasn't about to second-guess it. "Nothing more to do now," Jack said, trying to shake the feeling that he was making a mistake. "We'll just keep to the mission." But as the day went on, that uneasy feeling didn't go away. Suddenly the ship's alarm blared. "Warning," the computer's cold voice echoed. "Unknown vessel detected. Fast approach." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "What now?" he muttered. He quickly turned to the screen, where an unfamiliar ship appeared, closing in on them at an alarming rate. "Is that ... the Zarga?" asked, her face pale. Jack's eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching ship. It was sleek, dark, and had the unmistakable markings of a warship. The Zarga had a reputation for being ruthless, and this was the last thing Jack wanted to deal with. "I think we've got company," Jack said, his voice tight. "Get ready for anything." This might be it. Ava moved quickly to her station, her fingers flying across the controls as she tried to get a read on the enemy ship. "They're not responding to our hails," she reported, her voice filled with tension. "But they're definitely locking onto our coordinates." Jack gritted his teeth. "We can't outrun them. Prepare for a fight." But before anyone could react, a new message appeared on the screen. It was a live feed from the ship Lyra's ship. Jack's hands froze on the controls. The woman who had asked for their help was now on the screen, her face calm, but her eyes, those eyes held something darker than before. "You made the wrong choice," Lyra said, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable power. "Now, you will pay the price." Jack's stomach dropped. "What is this? What have you done?" Lyra smiled, but it wasn't a smile of kindness. "I told you I would find another way." Her eyes flashed with a cold, calculated intensity. "I knew you would refuse, so I prepared my own means to get your attention." The crew looked at each other in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. Jack's mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. "What do you mean by that?" Jack demanded. "You've already put us in danger by contacting us. Do you realize who's coming after us now?" Lyra's expression hardened. "You think the Zarga warlord cares about your little crew or your petty rules? Vorin cares only for power, and you're nothing but a tool for his game." Jack swallowed hard. This wasn't about helping her anymore. It never was. She had manipulated the situation to get what she wanted, and now they were caught in the middle of it all. "You didn't come here for help," Jack said slowly. "You came here to use us." Lyra's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold resolve. "You were never meant to help me. You were meant to help me escape. Now that you've refused, I'll deal with it my way." The screen flickered and the transmission cut off. Jack slammed his fist onto the console in frustration. "She locked us in." "That exactly," Ava said, her voice shaking as she looked at her own screen. "There's a lock on the control room. You can't access it without the key." Jack turned sharply. "What do you mean, where's the key?" Ava's eyes widened as she processed the information. "It's gone." "What?" "The key, she threw it out of the airlock." Jack felt a cold rush of panic. "She locked us out of the control room, and we can't do anything to stop this." The crew stared at the screen in disbelief, the situation rapidly spiraling out of control. The Astra was now a floating target, vulnerable and helpless against the approaching warship. "We're stuck," Jack muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. She's got us exactly where she wants us. Ava took a deep breath. We have to find a way to fix this. We can't just give up. Jack knew she was right. But the thought of facing the wrath of the Zarga warlord, with Lyra playing her own game from the shadows, made him wonder just how far they'd be willing to go to survive. We'll find a way, Jack said firmly, though doubt gnawed at him. But first, we need to figure out what Lyra's really after. The situation on the Astra was becoming more tense by the minute. The crew stared at the screens, helpless, as the enemy ship, still on a collision course, closed in rapidly. Jack knew they didn't have much time before the warlord's fleet would reach them. We're running out of options, Ava said, her voice trembling slightly as she looked at the crew. We can't just sit here and wait to be destroyed. Jack slammed his fist down on the console, frustration bubbling up inside him. Made a decision to avoid getting involved with Lyra to keep his crew safe, and now they were trapped in space, with a deadly warlord's fleet about to attack them. How had it all gone so wrong? We need to get into that control room, Jack said, his voice tight with anger. We need to access the ship's systems and figure out how to fight back. But Ava shook her head. We don't have the key. Lyra made sure of that. Jack took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. There had to be a way in. The crew needed to work together to find a solution before it was too late. We can't just give up, Jack said, more to himself than anyone else. We've dealt with worse situations. We'll find a way to break in. The crew members exchanged glances, unsure if they could trust the plan. But they all knew that Jack was right. They couldn't just sit back and wait to be captured. Time was running out, and they had to act quickly. Ava began working at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. I'm trying to hack into the ship's system, she said. It's not going to be easy, but maybe I can bypass the security measures. Jack nodded, watching her work. Do what you can, Ava. We don't have much time. Minutes passed as Ava worked, her face focused as she typed commands into the system. The ship's alarms continued to blare, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. Almost there, Ava said, her voice strained. Just a few more seconds, ... The tension in the room was palpable. Jack could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, his mind racing with thoughts of what would happen if they couldn't break into the control room in time. He could feel the weight of the crew's hopes resting on Ava's shoulders. Finally, Ava let out a relieved sigh. Got it. I've bypassed the security. The control room is open. Jack wasted no time. He motioned for the crew to follow him as they rushed to the control room door. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they quickly entered the room. Inside, everything was exactly as it had been when they last left it. The ship's systems were still locked down, but now they had access. Jack quickly moved to the console, trying to figure out how to regain control of the ship's systems. We need to get the ship moving. Fast, Jack said, his fingers moving over the controls. We can't outrun the warlord's fleet, but we can at least try to fight back. As Jack worked, Ava watched the approaching enemy ship on the screen, her face filled with worry. It's coming closer, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What if we can't stop it? Jack didn't answer right away. He was too focused on the task at hand. The ship's systems were complex, and it was taking longer than he expected to regain control. The enemy ship was nearly within firing range. I need more time, Jack said through gritted teeth, his frustration rising. We don't have much of a choice. We have to make this work. Ava nodded, her eyes still glued to the screen. We're almost there. Just keep working. But just as Jack thought they might have a chance, the ship's alarm blared again. The warlord's fleet had arrived. Here they come, Ava said, her voice filled with dread. We're running out of time. Gak! Cursed under his breath, his mind racing. They were so close, but it felt like they might lose everything at any moment. The warlord's fleet would soon be upon them, and he wasn't sure they could defend themselves. Come on, Jack muttered, willing the system to cooperate. Guys. His fingers flew over the console as he desperately tried to get the ships. Weapons systems online. Ava stood beside him, watching the screen. If we don't act now, we'll be sitting ducks. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He had to make a choice. He couldn't wait any longer. The warlord's fleet was closing in, and the ship's weapons were still offline. But there had to be something they could do to fight back. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered, and a strange hum filled the room. Jack looked up in confusion, his hands still on the console. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Ava stared at the screen, her eyes wide with shock. "It's—" Ava shook her head, her voice filled with disbelief. "She's accessing the systems remotely. She's taking control." Jack's mind spun as he realized what was happening. Lyra hadn't just locked them out of the control room. She had taken full control of the Astra. Jack stood frozen, staring at the console as the hum of the ship shifted in pitch. Wasn't just the ship's power systems that were changing it. Was as if the entire Astra had been taken over. The control panels flickered. Lights blinked in a way that told Jack everything he feared was happening. "Lyra," Ava muttered, her voice filled with disbelief. She's controlling the ship." Jack felt a cold chill creep down his spine. Lyra had already proven she could manipulate situations with ease, but this was something different. Locked them out of the control room, tossed the key into space, and now she was seizing control of their ship. "How is she doing this?" Jack asked, his voice low and tense. Ava quickly scanned the screens, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's like she's overridden the system. From her ship, she's tapping into our network." Jack's mind raced. The Astra had been equipped with state-of-the-art technology, and yet Lyra had somehow found a way in. Wise. Bypassing all their security measures. The realization hit Jack hard. This wasn't just about helping a desperate bride. This was about something far more dangerous. "We can't just let her take control like this," Jack said firmly. He was already moving toward the door, his thoughts focused on what to do next. "We need to stop her before she does something worse." Ava followed Jack, her eyes still glued to the screen. "But we don't even know what she's planning." "Then it's time we find out," Jack replied, his voice grim. They hurried through the ship's corridors, making their way toward the main communications deck. They needed to stop Lyra from taking full control of the Astra before it was too late. As they reached the door to the comms room, Jack paused, taking a deep breath. "All right," Jack said, glancing at Ava. "We're not going to sit around and wait for her to make her next move. Let's do this." Ava nodded, and they entered the comms room. Inside, the control panels were flashing wildly, indicating the Astra was still under attack. Jack quickly moved to the main console and started typing in commands. He knew Lyra had overridden most of the ship's systems. But they had to try something. The console beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. It was from Lyra's ship. "Jack." Lyra's voice came through the speakers, calm and steady. "You were warned. You must face the consequences of your actions." Jack clenched his jaw, refusing to be intimidated. "What do you want?" "From us, Lyra? You've locked us out, taken control of the ship? ... Why?" "I want freedom," she said softly, her voice filled with a strange calmness. "But more than that, I want you to understand that your choice, your refusal to help me has forced me into this. You were never going to allow me to escape. Now, I make the decisions." Jack's hands gripped the console tightly. "You're playing with us, Lyra. This isn't just about freedom anymore. You've manipulated the entire situation from the start. You've used us." Lyra's laughter echoed through the speakers, a soft, almost eerie sound. "Used you. Maybe, but I did what I had to do, and now I have what I want." Eva's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean? What do you want?" Lyra paused for a moment, her voice growing colder. "I want the warlord Vorin to suffer, to make him suffer. I will use every means at my disposal. Your ship, your crew, are now part of my plan." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. It was clear now that Lyra wasn't just a pawn. She had become the player in this game. The Astra was no longer just an exploration vessel, it was now a weapon, caught in the middle of a galactic power struggle. "We can't just let her control us," Jack said, his voice tight with frustration. "I agree," Ava replied, looking at Jack with determination. "But how do we fight back? She's controlling the ship remotely." Jack turned back to the console, searching for a way to regain control. He knew they couldn't take Lyra head and not without a plan. They needed to turn the tables. But how? I've got it, Jack muttered to himself. He had an idea. A risky one, but it might just work. If they could lock down Lyra's control systems and cut her access, they might be able to regain control of the Astra. Ava raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? Jack began typing quickly, entering commands into the console. I'm going to lock her out. We need to buy some time. If she can't access the ship's systems, she'll be powerless. Ava watched Jack's fingers fly across the keys, her heart racing. Oh. She knew this was their only chance. We need to get to the backup systems, Jack said, his voice tense as he continued typing. If we can cut off her connection, we might stand a chance of fighting back. Ava nodded. All right, let's do it. They turned and sprinted down the hallway to the backup control room. Jack's mind raced with every step. Lyra had proven she was resourceful, but they had the advantage of knowing their own ship better than she did. They just needed to stay one step ahead. As they reached the backup control room, Jack slid into the chair and began typing furiously at the console. He knew that if they didn't act fast, the warlord's fleet would be upon them, and it would be too late to stop anything. Just a few more seconds. ... Jack muttered, his hands shaking slightly from the pressure. Ava stood watch, eyes darting between the screens in the hallway, waiting for any sign of trouble. Finally, Jack let out a relieved breath. Got it. We've locked her out. For the first time in hours, Jack allowed himself to relax, if only for a moment. They had regained control of the Astra, but the real challenge was still ahead, dealing with Lyra and the warlord's fleet. The Astra was still, its systems now under Jack's control once again. The ship hummed softly, the quiet after the storm. Almost too peaceful. But Jack knew this calm wouldn't last long. They had regained control, but that didn't change the fact that Lyra had already set things in motion. And now, the warlord's fleet was closing in fast. Jack sat at the control panel, his mind working quickly, had to think of a way to protect the crew. The warlord's fleet wouldn't hesitate to destroy them. Lyra's game had put them all in danger, and now it was time to face the consequences. We have to move fast, Ava said, her voice breaking through Jack's thoughts. If we don't act now, we won't make it out of here. Jack nodded, his eyes still focused on the screens. We need a plan. The warlord's fleet is too powerful. We can't fight them head-on. Ava's gaze flicked between the screens. And Jack, then what do we do? Can't just wait to be attacked. Jack took a deep breath, his mind racing. We need to use the Astra's speed. We're not built for a fight, but we can outrun them, at least for a while. To use every trick we've got to stay ahead. But Lyra, Ava started, but Jack raised his hand to stop her. Lyra will be dealt with later. Right now, our priority is getting the ship to safety. Ava nodded, though Jack could tell she was still worried about the alien woman who had brought them into this mess. Jack had to admit, he didn't know what to do about Lyra. She had manipulated them all, used their compassion for her own gain. But now was not the time for questions. They needed to focus on survival. Jack quickly typed in the commands to initiate the ship's faster-than-light engines. We'll jump to the nearest galaxy cluster. It's a small risk, but it's our best shot. Are you sure the warlord won't follow us? Ava asked, her eyes on the countdown timer. The warlord's fleet will have to follow us manually. They'll be too slow to catch up. We'll have a small window of time to make it out of here. With that, Jack hit the final key, and the Astra's engines roared to life. The stars outside the window stretched into long lines as the ship entered hyperspace, the peaceful hum replaced by a sharp, high-pitched sound as the ship raced through space. Jack leaned back in his chair, trying to calm his racing thoughts. They had made it out, but they were far from safe. Lyra was still out there, and the warlord's fleet was likely planning their next move. Jack couldn't afford to relax, even for a second. Where are we headed next? Ava asked, breaking the silence. Jack didn't hesitate. We'll go to the Outer Rim. There are remote colonies out there. We can find shelter, regroup, and figure out our next move. The ship continued its journey through hyperspace, and Jack couldn't help but think about what had happened. Lyra had been right. He hadn't helped her. He had refused her request to escape, thinking it would be too risky. But now, with the warlord's fleet chasing them, Jack realized that he had made the wrong choice. He had underestimated Lyra, and in doing so, he had put them all in danger. What's next? Ava asked again, her voice softer now. Jack didn't have a clear answer. He didn't know what Lyra's ultimate goal was. He didn't know why she had come to them in the first place. But he knew one thing for sure. The Astra wasn't just a ship anymore. It had become a symbol of something much bigger, a symbol of their struggle to survive in a galaxy filled with power struggles and uncertainty. We keep going, Jack said after a pause. We keep moving forward, and we deal with whatever comes next. The journey was long, and the crew was exhausted. But as the Astra drifted toward the outer rim of the galaxy, Jack felt a sense of relief. They had made it this far. They had survived the warlord's pursuit, at least for now. But the question remained, what would happen when they eventually had to face Lyra again? As the ship entered a quiet sector of space, Jack took a moment to look out at the stars. There was a whole universe out there, and they were just one small part of it. But right now, that felt like enough. They had to take things one step at a time. We'll figure it out, Jack said quietly to himself. We'll make it through this. Ava, standing beside him, nodded. She didn't need to say anything. They both understood that the road ahead would be difficult, but it was theirs to travel. Together, they would face whatever came next. And with that thought, Jack turned away from the window and began to focus on the task at hand. They weren't out of danger yet, but at least for now, they had a chance to regroup. The Astra was drifting through deep space, the quiet of the outer rim offering some peace after the chaos of the past few days. Jack sat in the command chair, staring at the stars outside the ship's window. He could hear the hum of the engines, but his mind was far from calm. Lyra's betrayal, the warlord's fleet, and their narrow escape had left him questioning everything. What's the plan now? Eva's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back into the present. She was standing at the console, her eyes focused on the star charts ahead. Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. We need to rest and figure things out. We've outrun the warlord's fleet for now, but that doesn't mean we're safe. Lyra's still out there, and I'm not sure what she wants anymore. Ava nodded. She's the one who put us in this situation, and yet we're still chasing her. She locked us out, used us, and now we're the ones running. Jack's mind raced. He had been sure that helping Lyra was a mistake. But now, after everything that had happened, he wasn't so sure. She had manipulated them, yes, but did that mean she was a villain? Or was she just caught in a fight for her own survival? We're not chasing her anymore, Jack said quietly. We're just trying to survive, and maybe it's time to figure out exactly who Lyra really is, and why she did what she did. Ava looked at him, her expression thoughtful. You really believe she was trying to escape that warlord? Or was it something else? I don't know, Jack admitted, standing up and pacing around the room. But I do know that the stakes are higher than we thought. She has some kind of plan, and we've been dragged into it. I need to understand what she's up to before it's too late. Ava sighed. She didn't ask for help out of kindness, that's for sure. But I don't think she wanted to hurt us either. She's playing a dangerous game, and we're stuck in the middle. Jack stopped pacing and faced Ava. You're right. The more I think about it, the more I realize we have to make a choice. Do we continue running, hoping she'll leave us alone? Or do we confront her and figure out what she really wants? The ship drifted further into space as Jack's words hung in the air. The decision was a difficult one. They could stay hidden, far away from the warlord and Lyra, but that didn't feel like an option anymore. If they just kept running, they might never understand the bigger picture. We can't keep running forever, Jack said finally. We need to find out what Lyra's up to. We need to face her, figure out her plans, and decide what to do next. Ava was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, so what now? Jack walked over to the communication station, tapped a few keys, and Lyra's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes sharp and calculating. You've come to speak with me, I see. Jack took a deep breath. We've been running foe. Our days, Lyra? I want answers. What are you really after? Why did you manipulate us like this? Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. You still don't understand, do you? You think I've used you? But the truth is, you've been a part of something much bigger than yourselves. Something that even I don't fully control. Jack's brow furrowed. What do you mean? You've put us in danger. Put your own people in danger. Why? Lyra leaned forward, her voice steady. Because, Jack, the galaxy is changing. You, along with everyone else, will either adapt or be swept aside. I've spent years trying to escape the control of a warlord who seeks nothing but power. My people have suffered for too long under his rule, and now we are at a crossroads.
Jack's
confusion deepened. You're trying to start a rebellion? Lyra's eyes flickered with something close to approval. What? Not a rebellion, a revolution. But it's not just about fighting Vorin. It's about freeing the entire galaxy from the cycle of power struggles and fear. Ava looked at Jack, her expression conflicted. You're trying to change the galaxy, Lyra? You've been using us to start a revolution? I didn't use you, Lyra said firmly. You are part of this now. You may not realize it, but you've already made a choice by helping me. You have the power to change things if you choose to. Jack's head was spinning. You've dragged us into a war, Lyra. People will die because of this. Lyra's gaze softened for a brief moment. I know, and I wish it were different. But the only way to stop the suffering is to challenge the power structures that hold the galaxy together. Vorin is just the beginning. He is the symbol of everything that is wrong. But I cannot do this alone. Jack's thoughts raced. Wasn't what he had expected at all. He had thought Lyra was simply trying to escape her marriage, her life. But now, it seemed like her goal was far greater. She wasn't just running from the warlord. She was challenging the very fabric of galactic rule. We're not fighters, Lyra, Jack said, his voice firm. We're explorers. Didn't. Sign up for this. Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Jack saw a flicker of vulnerability. You don't have to fight, Jack, but you can help me. Will help me take down the tyrants who are controlling everything. Jack paused, his mind turning over what Lyra had said. Could they really be a part of something that big? What? Could they be the ones to help change the course of the galaxy? Think about it, Jack said finally. Lyra smiled again, but this time it seemed less cold. I know you will. We're all in this together now. As the communication ended, Jack sat back. In his chair, his mind reeling. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. Nothing would be the same again. The silence in the Astra was almost deafening after the communication with Lyra ended. Jack sat back in his chair, staring at the blinking lights. On the console, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and questions. Lyra's words echoed in his head about the revolution, the power structures, the suffering of her people. What now? Ava asked quietly, her voice breaking through his thoughts. Jack looked at her. I don't know. She's asking us to help her. She's offering us a chance to be a part of something much bigger than ourselves. Ava frowned. A revolution. I don't know, Jack. This sounds like a lot to take on. We don't even know if we can trust her. Jack ran a hand through his hair. I know, but something about her. ... I can't ignore it. She's not the helpless bride I thought she was. She's trying to change the galaxy. And whether we like it or not, we're already involved. Ava sighed and looked out the window. At the stars, I just don't understand how we got here. We were just a crew on a simple mission. We're in the middle of a war we didn't ask for. We didn't ask for it, Jack agreed. But sometimes you don't get to choose. I've been thinking. Lyra's not asking us to fight. She's asking for help. She doesn't want to destroy everything. She wants to rebuild. Ava looked at him. And you believe that? I think she believes it, Jack replied. I don't think we can just ignore her anymore. She's right about one thing: there's suffering out there. The warlord and others like him have been in power for too long. Maybe this is our chance to be a part of something bigger. Ava nodded slowly, though Jack could see the doubt still lingering in her eyes. I get it. But we have to be careful. Whatever happens next, we can't forget that we're still human. We can't lose ourselves in all of this. Jack met her gaze. I won't. We'll do what we can to help, but we won't lose who we are in the process. The conversation ended with an uneasy silence between them. Jack knew Ava was right. They couldn't just jump in without thinking. They had to weigh their choices carefully. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the feeling that they had been part of something much bigger than a simple mission from the start. They were already caught in the tide of a changing galaxy, and whether they liked it or not, they would have to make a choice. As the hours passed, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was on the brink of something monumental. It was clear that Lyra wasn't just some escaped bride. She was a leader, a woman with a vision. But the question was, what was her true goal? And more importantly, could they trust her? The next day, the crew gathered in the briefing room, the weight of their decision hanging in the air. Jack stood at the head of the table, the crew members watching him closely. Ava, standing beside him, shot a look of concern his way. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. "We need to decide what we're going to do," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of their situation. "Lyra is asking us to help her, and if we do, we'll be part of something bigger than ourselves. We'll be fighting a war not just against the warlord, but against the entire system. That's been holding the galaxy in a constant state of conflict." Ava spoke up. "But we're not soldiers, Jack. We're explorers. We're not equipped to fight a revolution." Jack nodded. "I get that. But Lyra doesn't want us to fight directly. She wants us to help in other ways. We have skills, knowledge, and a ship things that could be useful to her cause." One of the crew members, Marcus, spoke up. "I've been thinking about it. The galaxy's not in a good place. The warlord and others like him have been in control for too long. Maybe helping Lyra is the right thing to do. But we need to be careful. If we get involved, there's no turning back." The room fell silent for a moment, everyone considering Marcus's words. Jack glanced at Ava, then back at the crew. "No, it's a big decision," he said, "but I think we've already made it. We're already in this. Lyra has tied us to her cause whether we want to admit it or not. Now it's just a matter of how we move forward." There was a long pause before Sarah, another crew member, spoke. "The alternative? Keep running forever, hiding from the consequences of our choices? I don't think that's who we are. We're not cowards. We have the chance to do something good here, to help change the galaxy not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Her words seemed to shift something in the room. Jack could see the crew members starting to come around. They weren't soldiers, but they had a purpose, and that purpose could mean something in the bigger picture. "We'll help Lyra, Jack," said his voice steady now. "But we'll do it on our terms. We'll use the Astra to gather information, help coordinate efforts, and if necessary, lend a hand to the cause. But we'll make sure we don't lose ourselves in the process." Ava looked at Jack, her expression still uncertain. But there was something else in her eyes now understanding. "All right, Jack, let's do this. Together." With that, the crew made their decision. They would help Lyra, but they would do it their way. The galaxy was changing, and they were ready to be a part of that change not as soldiers, but as people with a cause. They had taken the first step into the unknown, and there was no going back.